Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Holy Smoke, Cigars and Spirituality. I am Christian A. Smith. I'm the heretic and the host. And today we're going to deal with a topic that people have been asking us about for months. And when I say months, that's like basically the life of this show. We just started filming this, in like March. It feels like so much longer. This is episode 11 of season 2. And today we're talking about the devil's lettuce, cannabis, weed, loud, gas, reefer, pot, Mary Jane, whatever you call it. That's what we're talking about. So, what is a Christ like response to cannabis use? And if you are listening to this later, we got our live virtual audience with us now. You should know that we're recording this the day after the election, so we don't even know who the president is. So some of us in the Holy Smokes movement may have engaged in some cannabis use. I'm not speaking for anybody. I haven't done any in response to the election, but that's my business. So anyway, Holy Smokes does disruptive faith-based content for the everyday person. We try to keep it as accessible as possible. So shout out to our patrons who join us on Patreon and to those who listen to us on the podcast platforms. Thank you so much. And to our people over at Fam Radio who catch us every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We here at Holy Smokes have one rule only. Obviously, we're talking about cannabis, so like we obviously don't have a whole lot of rules. Just the fact that we're even discussing this topic is disruptive. But our one rule here is that we respect each other's lived experience, and I think that's going to come in handy in this conversation today. One rule again is that we respect each other's lived experience.
One more
If
time.
Yeah, because the kingmaker's not here, so somebody else has to ask me for the third time. One rule is that we respect each other's lived experience because a lot of times when we have conversations about life, faith, and theology, people tend to lift up their theory or their doctrine over the lived experiences of others. So we challenge people when you encounter someone whose lived experience contradicts your doctrine or your theory, take that as an opportunity to learn from what that individual has lived. And that one rule is guided by Greatest Commandment Theology. I actually wrote a book on it. It's called Breaking All the Rules. Greatest Commandment Theology says that your love for God is displayed through how you love your neighbor, which is an extension of how you love yourself. Therefore, you can't fully love God if you don't love your neighbor, and you can't fully love your neighbor if you don't love yourself. Jesus said that in the Gospels, and it's reinforced all throughout the scriptures. So that's the basis for what we do here at Holy Smokes. And then we have this mechanism here called the dollar jar. Because we have people who tend to use big words. Now, the last episode, I accused people of being chronic big word users, and then I got hit with the dollar jar like 2 or 3 times. So I'm going to just mind my business today. But basically, the way the dollar jar works is when somebody uses an academic word that needs to be defined and they don't immediately define it, they're going to get this notification. That lets you know that they use a dollar jar word and they owe us some money and they have to define that word. Also, we have some brilliant people on this show who say very profound things. One of them is our special guest today. She's actually one of our producers. Her name is Tierney Jordan. We call her AT&T because she does all the things, and she is a womanist theologian. She is a brilliant producer and preacher and just all the great things that she does. She actually just dropped her podcast, so check out Sassy Soulversations. Tierney Jordan, AT&T, is with us today. Yes, yes,
And
yes.
contribute on Patreon. Contribute on Patreon.
Yes, and check her out on Patreon. So we have these people who have great thoughts, make profound statements. So whenever somebody has a mic drop moment, you're going to get this notification. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. So let's go ahead and get into some introductions before we start talking about the loud, the gas, the weed. Anybody else watch Family Guy? Stewie? Weed. Okay. All right. It's not just me. So for by way of introductions today, tell us what you're smoking and drinking. And then just quick question. Do you think cannabis should be legalized nationally? Yes, no, undecided. You don't have to go into a long explanation. Just want to see where we're starting this conversation today. So I'll start. This is the first episode where I'm not smoking. I'm out of town. As you know, it's COVID-19. Uh, and it's still taking people out of here. So I've had some deaths in my immediate network. So I'm out of town right now and couldn't find a place to smoke for this recording. So first episode where I'm not smoking a cigar and it's troubling me. But I'm having some Camus cognac tonight in the plastic hotel cup. When I poured this, because I'm in the city where I went to college, it reminded me of homecoming all over again. I mean, as I was pouring the cognac in this cup, I was like, oh man, we didn't have homecoming this year. But that's what I'm having. Unfortunately, I'm not smoking. And I say yes, cannabis should be legalized nationally. And I guess we'll get into that conversation as we go. I want to let Tierney introduce herself first, and then we're gonna have Grayson and then Myron. So, Tierney, you got it.
Okay, like he said, my name is Tierney Jordan, and they call me AT&T for doing all the things and saying all the things all the time. I am not smoking or drinking. I'm at my in-laws' house, so you gotta be respectful of grown people and their rules. And as far as do I think marijuana should be legalized nationally, I will say yes.
You better not say that too loud if you at the in-laws house. You gonna get in trouble.
I mean, anyways.
All right, let's kick it over to Grayson.
Hey everyone, it's Grayson, pronouns he, him, his. Today I'm going by Sparkle because apparently my ears look pierced because of the glare from the light that I'm using. So I have ears to hear, and what I heard was go by Sparkle today. So Sparkle. I am drinking one of the Holy Smokes favorites. Obviously, Uncle Nearest is nearest and dearest to our hearts. But I'd say, correct me if I'm wrong, Christian, but I'd say that Larceny is probably a second.
Yeah,
Maybe
it's up there. It's
it's up
up
there.
there. Yeah, it's our favorite beverage at the atelier
Okay.
when my people come to the atelier and get their custom clothes done. Tiger is the one that kind of coined this phrase. No visit to the atelier is complete without a dram of larceny. So that's how it kind of became popular.
Hey, Holy Smokes family, this is Christian Smith. I'm the host and the heretic of Holy Smoke Cigars and Spirituality. And I'm excited today because we're announcing the launch of the Holy Smoke Cigar Club. Here's how you sign up. If you go to patreon.com/TFCATL, there's a Holy Smoke Cigar Club sign up where for $20 a month you can get access to all of our visual footage. And you can be a part of our live studio audience every single month. You can provide feedback. You can tell us what episodes you want us to film in the future. And then the most important piece, every single month, you're going to get a Holy Smokes branded cigar in your mailbox directly from us. It's just $20 a month. You're getting way more than what you paid for, and it's going to go so far in helping us to continue to create content just like this, because that's what we do: disruptive, faith-based content for the everyday person. So listen, go sign up. Holy Smoke Cigar Club, patreon.com/TFCATL, and start getting your own Holy Smoke cigar in the mail every single month. We hope to see you there. Looking forward to it.
I love it. It's so Tiger. So I'm having a dram of larceny. I'm not at the atelier. I'm at the apartment. Yes, cannabis should be legalized nationwide.
Okay, this is going to be problematic. You guys do know that we're ministers of the gospel, right? We're not supposed to be saying cannabis like this is a problem already. Jeez. Myron, please come and save us. Come give us some balance here.
Listen, I don't know if I have any salvation to offer. You better, try Jesus. Don't try me. I'm just saying. Myron Randall, the mystic here. I am smoking an Olivier Series G Churchill size. I'm also drinking what is this? A Beautiful. So a little cognac and Grand Marnier, or no, cognac and Amaretto. That's what I'm smoking or drinking here. And I definitely think weed should be legalized nationally. We have legalized a whole lot of things that are a whole lot more deadly, including driving cars. So why not legalize weed? Because I haven't heard anybody die from it yet. So.
Okay, we need to find us like a real preacher, like somebody who really knows Jesus to come be on this show. Because clearly, none of us knows Jesus because we're saying that cannabis should be legalized. Hey, if you're listening or you're watching, just stick with us. Just, stick with us. This should be interesting, as is every episode of Holy Smokes. So, and you can see the people in the live virtual audience are going in. Corey said cigarettes are dangerous. I agree. So let's go ahead and move forward. We added a new segment this season. Tiger started it with Tiger's cigar tips, and we haven't seen him in a while. So the Kingmaker jumped in there, and he called it the Kingmaker's Cigar Corner, and he started adding, background music. Last week he gave us Barry White in the background, and then Myron jumped in, and he called it Myron's Cigar Moment. And shots have been fired the entire season, like the entire season. So I don't know what we're in store for today. But we're back over to Myron the Mystic for Myron's Cigar Moment. Randall, you got it.
Folks, I'm excited to give you this cigar tip today. I'm not going to fire any shots because what the world needs now is love, sweet love. So shout out to my colleagues, the Kingmaker, and shout out to Tiger Gibson and your wonderful cigar things that you do for us. But here is my tip for today, folks. If I could put a title to this tip, the title would be Don't Tap That Ash. Don't tap that ash. When you're smoking a cigar, it's a little bit different than if you are smoking a cigarette. And I don't know if you've partaken in smoking cigarettes or even seen it on television or the movies. You see them, they puff, puff, they tap, tap, puff, puff, tap, tap. That's not how you do a cigar. Oftentimes, you can tell how well constructed a cigar is by how long the ash is that forms at the end of the cigar. You know you've got premium tobacco if the ash goes longer than an inch. An inch is about the tip of your finger. This is premium tobacco. Also, the ash at the end of your cigar, at the foot of your cigar, also helps to insulate the flame on your cigar, which helps it burn a little bit longer. So you get a little bit more life out of the cigar without having to relight it. So when you're smoking your cigar, let the ash form and don't tap that ash. If you're ready to dispose of the ash, all you need to do is grab your ashtray and just simply knock it off. Folks, that's my cigar tip of the day. Don't tap that ash.
Yeah, that was so useful. That was just great. Don't. Yeah,
I wish
absolutely.
the other tips were that useful.
No, they've all been great. They've all been great. But when you said, people smoke cigarettes and they tap tap, I couldn't help but think about one of our ministers at the faith community, William Glenn Bean,
Shout
who
out
wait, yes, you can give by way of Givelify. Tap tap and give. Gotta
Is it
love
horrible that
me.
I thought of the rapper Sweetie? Tap, tap, tap in. You can tap, tap, tap. That's what I thought of you too, William. But I also thought of Sweetie. I thought of both of y'all. I'm gonna quit right now.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. Yes. So
I do not own
let's get into
music.
You don't own what?
I own the rights to that music. I didn't want them to censor me because I sung that song.
You're silly, man. Let's talk about this. Let's get into it, okay? Because people have been asking us about cannabis use since we started this ministry, honestly. The Holy Smokes is a ministry of the faith community. It started out as a small group of people getting together at a cigar lounge to talk about life, faith, and theology. And we had a number of people who came through the visit and said, "Yeah, I got to put this online. People need to see this." So we decided to go ahead and create this podcast. But like people are constantly asking us, so can we smoke blunts here? What about weed? Like, is cannabis allowed? Like, I want to roll up a J. Like, we get we get all of these questions, and it's like, guys, it's cigars and spirituality. Like, I'm not about to knock you or condemn you for smoking cannabis, but that's not what this group is about. Like, we do cigars and spirituality. But I do think it's a conversation worth having. This is not a conversation about whether or not we're going to start incorporating cannabis into this ministry. I can tell you right now that's not what's going to happen. But let's talk about it. So what I want to do is just start out by getting some foundational information because we all come from different backgrounds here. And I want AT&T to get us started off. Like, what was your church tradition stance on cannabis use, and like has that shifted over time? KT&T, you got anything?
So I grew up in a traditional missionary Baptist church. So, as good Baptists, we could drink, but you couldn't smoke the marijuana, and so we couldn't do that because it was illegal, and we can't break the laws of the land, and so yeah, we couldn't smoke weed. We could have a drink in the privacy of our own home, but no weed. And then I don't think that's changed. Of course, I don't go to the church I grew up in anymore, but I don't think they would be down with the smoking of the cannabis or the Mary Jane. So yeah, no.
What about edibles? Do they have a problem with edibles?
Well, edibles is an unspoken rule,
Um,
so you don't talk about it. So in that case, you can I guess you can do whatever you want.
mm, so
Don't ask, don't tell.
yeah, so it's like a don't ask, don't tell policy.
Because we didn't explicitly talk about edibles, but smoking was a no-no.
Gotcha. Don't ask, don't tell. The church does that a lot, don't we?
The church does don't ask, don't tell about everything.
Yeah, well, everything. Like we talk about it a lot with the Q plus community. Like you can be gay, just don't tell anybody. Just don't be out. Just don't try to come in here with your partner. Like, you can eat edibles, just don't tell us, which is so confusing because it's like, so am I sinning against God or am I sinning against you? Which is, another.
And is there a difference in their mind?
Yeah, is there a difference? That's good, Sparkle. That's a good one. Sparkle. Matter of fact, why don't you go ahead and answer because you come from a drastically different background than the rest of us. What was your church's stance, if any, and has it shifted at all?
So my home church, I don't remember there ever being much said about, we would have said marijuana. And I like that we're intentionally not using that term. And I hope we get into why later. But I don't think we would have said anything about marijuana, chiefly because we didn't say much about anything. I think in true white moderate fashion, I just happened to see Corey's comment. My home county was dry until like 5 years ago. So that's a whole other context. But mostly because we didn't really talk about anything beyond like generalities, like love and these vague concepts of like community and noble things, but without much like legs to them. But nonetheless, it's a reoccurring theme. Like, nonetheless, I still caught what Tierney was talking about. Like, don't do it. I remember when I had some friends in the church get caught with weed. I was just like devastated. I was like, how could they? This is so immoral and wrong. And that was never explicitly taught to me, but there was no other narrative put forth in my church. And so the narrative surrounding me, as tends to be the case for most of my growing up, the narrative surrounding me was that this was wrong, this was illegal. And so only a certain type of person does this. And it's not even, that wasn't necessarily racialized, but it was more, and it was, but it was also like, stoners do that, or skater kids do that, or like goths do that, but not the kind of person you want to be. So, and as far as that goes, I really have no finger on the pulse on that issue in the day since.
Okay. This is really interesting. It's like we're having this conversation and discovering that there wasn't a lot said. And I think a lot of that is probably tied to legality. Like, the church maybe doesn't feel the need to address things that the law already addresses. That might be something to unpack here a little bit. I like what Corey said a minute ago. Corey said that he believes that John was probably smoking a blunt on the Isle of Patmos when he got that revelation. That sounds like a high revelation, though. That does sound like some high stuff. I can't even lie. That's a great observation, Corey.
So, Christian, I just want to say briefly, this is for another episode, but what you just said was really interesting about, like, does the church feel a need to comment on things if the legality isn't in question? Because you think about like the religious right in the 80s were like building their coalition based on many issues, one of which being same-sex marriage. In the 50s, I don't know that the church was really talking about it that much, but it was illegal. Like, homosexuality was illegal.
Mhm.
I don't know. And I think that those laws started to soften. I would have to get the timeline. Anyway, that's a whole other episode, but I think you're onto something there.
Yeah, I think that's something that we need to uncover. And Josh said that John had to be on more than weed. He had to have some PCP rolled in there with that revelation that he got. Myron, what about your church tradition, man? Full gospel. What did they say?
Yeah, so I grew up, Baptist Costal, and we commented on it. Yeah, don't go do that. Don't drink. Don't smoke. Don't do any of that, because that messes with your holiness. You know what I mean? You got to perform in order to be holy. So therefore, don't do these things, because that's going to affect your performance, which then does not make you holy anymore. Even though last time I checked, my righteousness was as filthy rags in the first place, and then I needed some help to be holy. Just throwing that out there. But they would always justify it with scripture. And they would use that passage in the book of Ephesians. Be ye not drunk with wine, wherein as excess, but be ye filled with the Holy Spirit. Y'all heard that in the book of Ephesians. That's the scripture they would quote. And I used to quote that, so I can't judge them. But then I matured spiritually and realized that I take the Bible too seriously to read it literally. I've got to learn how to do some investigation. Isn't it crazy that when we get to the Bible, we toss out our reading comprehension? We read Zora Neale Hurston with more intention and investigation than we do the scriptures.
Sir.
So we had to go back and look at that text. And I know I'm over my time, but I got to point this out. When you look at that text, I would suggest that Paul is not speaking physically. He's speaking spiritually, because he mixes the metaphors. Don't be drunk with wine, which is something you consume physically, but be ye filled with the Spirit, which is something that's a spiritual necessity. So he's really making a spiritual comment as opposed to a natural idea or a natural law. There's a principle, I think, that he's trying to give us. The principle is, don't submit your spirit to anything that causes you to lose your sobriety. And when I say your sobriety, I don't mean getting drunk or losing your mind. I mean losing your vigilance. I think you can replace that word wine with anything that steals your sobriety, like power. Be ye not drunk with power. power, wherein as access, but be ye filled with the Holy Spirit. And it looks like the church has done that. We've gotten drunk on power before. We saw it just last month when we endorsed the candidate, not concerned about his character, because we liked visits to the White House and we like to take photo ops where we get to put our hands on the shoulder of the man who sits at the desk, drunk with power. So don't submit your spirit to something that steals your sobriety and your vigilance and doesn't allow you to see what you really need to see. I think that's the real issue.
I feel like,
Yeah.
nah, man, I feel like this is cheating. You're cheating.
Right. That
No,
awesome.
you're cheating, man. You think about this stuff too hard before we film,
No,
and you like, oh, I'm gonna drop this right here, and this is gonna kill him. You know what, man? I'm on to you.
It just flows off the tongue.
I'm on to you. That's even worse. If that type of stuff just flows off of the tongue, it's even worse, Myron.
No. I just be, spitting it.
You bring up a great point, and I think what a lot of people miss, because as far as I know, the Bible doesn't address cannabis, right? Anybody? Okay, so the Bible does not address cannabis. So I think it's really interesting that we created these rules about cannabis when the Bible doesn't even address it. But like you said, we don't even investigate it for ourselves. And I think a lot of it has to do with the legality. I think a lot of it has to do with the legality of the issue. In my church growing up, like, it was like you weren't supposed to smoke. You weren't supposed to drink, dare, just say no. Don't do dope. This is your brain. And then, you put the egg in the skillet and it starts frying. This is your brain on drugs. Like, I had that whole thing growing up, and my church pretty much, went along with that. But today, I don't know where my church growing up would stand, because my dad was my pastor. And I'm not going to tell my dad's past. I don't know all the details. I'd like to imagine that if my dad were still alive, we'd have some spirited conversations about cannabis. And I believe that he would be more open than a lot of people would suspect. Sometimes people look at me and they think I'm a disappointment to my dad because I'm so progressive. And some people think he was really conservative. Like, my dad was not conservative at all.
Oh, really? That hurts my heart to hear.
What, that people think I'll be a disappointment?
Yes. I think just from what I've heard from your dad, he seems awesome. Like, if heaven works this way, I can't wait to meet him.
Yeah,
I mean, a phenomenal preacher too. My God.
Oh,
Whew.
thank y'all.
Lord have mercy.
Yeah, I don't give that stuff too much energy or too much attention. I just think it's hilarious. But I think it'll be interesting today to see where my home church would stand on the issue, because I'm from California. So it's fully legal in California now, which I think is a major issue. Like, so I'm not sure how churches in California are addressing it, if they even are, where it's fully legal. Now, I live in Georgia now, so it's not fully legal here. So it's almost like, so how does the church handle it in one place where it's legal, but then in another place where it's not legal? So here's my question that I want to like jump back into is, if legality is not a factor, then what are the arguments against cannabis use? Like, valid arguments, because nothing is perfect. What are the valid arguments against cannabis use if legality isn't an issue? Grayson, what you got?
Oh, honestly, I don't know. The only thing I'm thinking about is we might be able to see the question you posed earlier, like how churches handle it. Like, if Georgia were to decriminalize or legalize weed, how churches would handle it. We might be able to see that in real time in New Jersey, Arizona, and there's one more state I can't remember, but 3 states just legalized marijuana in this election cycle. So maybe that can be a guinea pig. I mean, there's the armchair doctors, right? Like the ones who are like, it kills your brain cells, or it. I mean, there's been so many lies peddled about it that, like, from everything from like it's the gateway drug to it causes suicidality, which is like, you know, the maybe the intent or the circumstances in which suicide could occur. That I actually don't know if there are legitimate reasons not to do it, because I recognize most of the reasons I grew up hearing and most of the reasons that I had to work through in order to be okay with my friends. Totally not me, just my friends. And even if I did, I wouldn't inhale. But you know, when my friends did it, only that I would become okay with it. I don't know, because it's been so lied about and blown up and almost like made into this like myth. So I hope y'all can enlighten me.
I don't know if I'm gonna be able to enlighten you. I do think you told on yourself though. I want to know who these friends are, and I want their phone numbers so I can reach out to them and see if you participated in this process. So and Josh just right. Josh just made brought up a good point. He said I could see weed being considered as a problem when mixed with the operation of equipment. Um, I agree that you probably shouldn't smoke weed and start operating heavy machinery. Um, I think that that's something to be taken into consideration, but not a knock against the ultimate use of cannabis, because there are a number of things that we intake that we should not use or operate heavy machinery within our system. So, I mean, Grayson's holding up his cup right now. You probably shouldn't have a few drams of larceny and operate equipment. And oh yeah, by the way, Timothy Carruthers is here. So now we got to get on our P's and Q's, everybody. Timothy Carruthers is in the live virtual audience. Everybody straighten up because the man of God has arrived. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. T, come on, help us out. Well, like, what are the arguments against cannabis besides the legality?
So I don't know. Okay, so the only thing that I'm thinking is like moderation considerations, which is kind of what Josh was talking about, and how, you know, we have regulations on alcohol and you shouldn't drive a car if you are not sober enough to do that. And so I don't know what like stipulations could go around that, but that all still ties back to legality at some point. And so thinking through what Myron was saying earlier, um, I could see how the church could argue it from you're not the most in tune with God because you're high, but then other religions turn that around and say that when you are more connected to God. And so I don't think that really answers your question, but that's what came up for me. So it's like the church is arguing that if you have a lack of high, you are more connected to God, but other spiritualities would argue otherwise. So
Yeah, this is really interesting. I thought you guys were going to have some serious
Can I
arguments against
throw
it. Come on.
something in here, Tierney? I'm gonna lose my ordination for this one. You just said something so interesting, right? So the church would say that I'm not close to God because I've gotten high. I lost my mental capacity, right? And so it connects or disrupts my fellowship with God. But you know, there's another something in the church that does the exact same thing, and we purport its benefits. We call it glossolalia. We call it speaking in tongues because it bypasses your mental capacities and allows you to connect fully with God. So could it be that smoking weed is the same thing as speaking in tongues? That it allows you to get out of your natural thought process? Your spirit can communicate more freely with the divine? Just thought I'd throw that out there.
I think you should get a dollar jar for saying glossolalia,
Ah,
whatever you said. But I really appreciate your point. I agree
speaking
with
in
you.
tongues.
And I think too, that sounds like white supremacy to me. Like if you don't have your rationality, if you're not thinking things, then you can't get in touch with God because your body's bad, especially if it's darker than this, and your desires are bad. So this is where God lives, because this is the thing that white people can control. And so if you lose your mental faculties and then you move into your body, where the anger at white supremacy resides and the anger at being denied a God that looks like and loves like and cares about you, then that's the issue. So I think white supremacy is afoot.
Grayson, that makes so much sense, because when you compare it to speaking in tongues, which started at the Azusa Street Revival in 1901 by a black man,
which was multiracial,
which was a multiracial thing,
right.
But it was run by a black man that kind of started this thing when he started to lose control, if you would, and bypass his mental capacity so he could communicate with God.
Can we get a retroactive mic drop from Myron for comparing that to glossolalia? Sorry, that was so good to me.
Listen, I'm going to speak in tongues as soon as I'm done with this show.
You gonna buy a Honda?
There it is.
She rode a Honda. She rode a Honda. That was good, sir. That was very good. Listen, I mean, for me, I've been trying to think, like, what are the valid arguments against cannabis use besides legality? And honestly, y'all, I can't think of any. Like, anything that you consume can be abused, right? So you can abuse cannabis, but you can abuse chocolate. You can abuse water. You can drink too much water and it not be good for you. So I can't just, and depending on the substance, that determines how much you should consume. Of course, you can take in much more water than you can alcohol, but both can be abused. So the same thing I think applies to cannabis. So like once we move past the issue of legality, I honestly don't know of a reason why cannabis use should be condemned by people who follow Christ. I don't have one, and I try because I really want to keep Holy Smokes as balanced as possible and give the different perspectives. But y'all, I'm lost on this one. It's like, what's the problem other than the legal issue? So tell me this. And if you're listening to this, or if you're in the virtual audience and you have some good arguments, please do share them, because I've been racking my brain trying to figure out, like, what are the arguments against it? Because I've never heard of anybody ODing on cannabis. I've never heard of anybody contracting any type of disease like lung cancer because of cannabis. Like, none of this stuff. I've never heard of it. Now, it was criminalized. And Grayson was talking about this with the name marijuana, and how cannabis was given the name marijuana in the States to link it to Hispanic people and criminalize it. And there's a long tradition and a history behind that, which is why I don't use the term marijuana and why Grayson brought it up. So it was criminalized and a bunch of lies were told about it. Like, you would be, if you smoke weed, you would go on like homicidal rampages. And like everybody I know who's ever used cannabis is so chill. Like the furthest thing from homicidal. I've never seen anybody get high and get into a fight. I've never seen anybody get high and want to start an argument. Like, I just haven't seen it. So outside of the legality, I can't think of one.
You know what's interesting?
Go ahead.
White people needed weed to make up homicidal rampages for people of color, but the only thing white people need to justify our actual homicidal rampages is whiteness.
Yeah. I mean, you said it. I did. You said it.
Anywho,
Um, yeah, yeah. So, and Corey brings up a good point. Like, both Corey and Tim are with us in the virtual audience. Tim brought up the obey the law thing, which goes back to the legality. And then Corey says, hey, what if the law isn't valid because segregation was legal? So we got to be careful not to conflate legality with morality. We can't conflate what did I say?
Legality.
Legality? I've said it 17 times. What do you mean? Legal.
the
Some
18th was the peak.
There it is.
Oh, this is trash. This is trash. I'm not doing this anymore. I don't want to be the host. Somebody else take it over. Nah. Okay. I don't really don't know what I said. Legality deals with the legal nature of an issue. Maybe it was conflate. Was it conflate? I don't know. Okay. Well, anyway, we haven't really been able to come up with any arguments against it outside of the legality. It's against the law in some places. So, do you guys have any benefits that you have heard of or experienced for yourself? Don't tell on yourself if you don't want to. But any benefits? T, you got anything? AT&T, hook us up. What you got?
So just thinking about it from the medical perspective and the way that it can alleviate pain, the benefits that it has had and shown with cancer patients. And so if we take away the stigma and this socialization and criminalization that smoking weed is bad and that CBD is bad and that like all of the different types of ways that you can um, use cannabis that don't actually require you to smoke, I mean like edibles, gummies, all of that type of stuff. And you think about the medical benefits that they have, even for PTSD, by like what Christian was saying, being able to be chill in that way to make sometimes your brain slow down and just the medical benefits is somewhere that I think we could start if we take away that stigma and that criminalization, and we can open up a different possibility to holistic medicine. But that goes against capitalism and the people making money, which is another reason that they don't want to do that. So
Did y'all see she was about to start going off right there? Did y'all feel that shift? It was like, uh-oh. Like, it was like it was coming, and then she caught herself. No, great points. Great points. Grayson, you got anything? Like, what are the benefits that you know of?
Tierney named, I think, the ones that were coming to my mind. Anxiety that goes along with PTSD. So I think any effects of a mental illness or a mental condition or just like day-to-day anxiety, I think it can be very effective in dulling that. And that same goes for CBD, which is a different, I forget why CBD and marijuana cannabis are different, except that there isn't THC, which is the chemical that produces the high feeling. But CBD is great for, and therefore THC, which is in cannabis, is great for also like knee pain or like joint pain. I didn't even mean to.
can you get a pun or something for that? Like, can we need a sound for every time Grayson makes like, oh
Yeah,
goodness.
we need a pun notification.
You need like a wah 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 like that.
God.
$5 every time. I would be broke. So yes, ball and socket body part pain. That's another. Yeah, and I think it just helps people get through life easier, and with like all of those other factors in consideration, those who could most benefit from cannabis, those who experience the most trauma and stress living in our society. So take your pick of what minoritized group that might be. It's interesting that they are the ones who could benefit from something that's natural, not very harmful if used in moderation. Our body already has receptors for it. Like it is something that our body is designed to digest and to process. But it is interesting that the ones who could most use a stress relief are the ones that get penalized the most for using it. So I don't know.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, because there are a whole lot of people still in prison right now for simple marijuana possession.
And I
Like,
bet you they don't look like me.
most of them do not. You know, a lot of people, when they talk about the drug war, you know, the war on drugs that decimated black communities throughout the country, a lot of that is tied to crack as far as the narrative is concerned. But 70% of those arrests were actually cannabis related. So the narrative was crack, but the stats actually tied it to cannabis.
And then of course we have the whole difference between like crack is the poor person or the person of color's drug, but cocaine is for classy white people who need to get stuff done or have a good time at the party. But
Right.
that's another conversation.
Right, exactly. Now you said something about joint pain, which I think is a very important thing to bring up. Because what I want to do after we hear from Myron on this topic is, like, so we're talking about medicinal purposes for THC and cannabis. What about the recreational part? But we'll get to that in a second. But I think on the medicinal side, for us to just outright condemn cannabis, I'm gonna give you an example of a benefit that cannabis has had in the life of somebody I know. I know somebody who had serious knee issues, like would wake up in the morning sometimes and the inflammation would be so bad in their knee that they couldn't even walk, right? And they were going to their doctor to try to figure out how can they address this. Now, this person was totally against cannabis. Apparently, you know, they had been raised in churches like ours that condemned it and told them that it was wrong and it was the devil's lettuce and you shouldn't use it. But this person couldn't even really walk sometimes. The pain was so bad. And their doctor said, look, we can try to do the surgery to fix this. I can't guarantee you it's going to work because it's risky. And if it doesn't work, I may have to amputate your legs. Or you can start smoking weed because the weed is going to help with the inflammation. So this friend of mine said, cool, let me try the weed. He got over the stigma that he had about weed. He started smoking the weed to help with the inflammation in his knees. And he said it changed his entire life. He said he would get up in the morning and his knees would be so inflamed that he couldn't walk. And then he would hit the blunt a few times. And in 30 minutes, he'd be going for a jog. Like, I'm sorry, y'all. I can't condemn the use of a substance that does that for people. I just can't do that outright. So, you know, that's just one benefit. Myron, can you think of any benefits of cannabis use?
This is a true story. Christian, you were with me. There was a pastor, a major pastor in the city. He or she shall remain nameless.
I was there.
This pastor is a mighty person of God and told us that they were having insomnia issues. Took a little weed to help with the insomnia and was like, listen, I fall asleep now in 10 minutes. And so this man or woman of God was like, I do it every night now, and still is pastoring a major church in the city.
Yeah, she or he was excited about that too.
Yeah, he was excited.
She or he was like, oh man, you know that stuff. I took some of it and woo, yeah. I felt so good. I was like, oh,
you go ahead, woman of God. Person of God.
Person of God, you know, non-binary, like whatever.
Whatever. Yes, I'm a mute.
Listen, it's Atlanta. It could be a non-binary person.
It could, but we're just trying to change the names to protect the innocent or the guilty, however you look at it. We're just trying to protect the people. Can you think of any other benefits, Myron? Was that the one that you wanted to share?
Yeah, it's helping people sleep better, right? It's getting rid of their back pain and their joint issues, right? So why would we eliminate the use of something that's this medicinal? What, Revelation 22? I saw a tree whose leaves were good for the healing of the nations? That's what John saw. Why can't we see the same thing?
Hey, that revelation that he had, Corey and Josh said he must have been high on something because that was a high revelation. It was a high revelation. So we see like there are these benefits, y'all, but the church is condemning it. And now we're working through the legality issue because states are starting to legalize it. Of course, as AT&T brought up, a lot of that has to do with capitalism because this is a major industry where people can make a lot of money. But like it's really helping people. And this is a thought that I just had because we talk a lot about toxic theology on Holy Smokes and at the faith community. So could it be that we have toxic theologies that create anxiety in people and cannabis helps to relieve that anxiety? So part of the reason why the church is opposed to cannabis is because cannabis is actually its competition. Because cannabis is relieving the anxiety that the church creates with toxic theology. And I need you to have that anxiety because it helps me to control you.
That was a well-deserved mic drop, my friend. Well-deserved.
I just it just came to me. It was just a thought. I could be wrong, but it was a thought. So so tell me, yeah, what should the church do? Like because weed is going to eventually be legal everywhere. Is weed something the church should just leave alone? Should we not talk about it? Should it be a don't ask, don't tell? Should we encourage people to use it responsibly? Should we say stay away from it at all costs? Like, what should we do? Look, I'm the pastor of the faith community. Today, actually, everybody on the cast is an integral part of my ministry team, which is so beautiful. Yeah, I have the best team on the planet. Seriously, no questions asked. I don't care what you say. You show me your team, I'm gonna put my team up against it, and we're gonna beat them every time. Listen, I got a phenomenal team. So anyway, what should the church do in response to cannabis? Whatever you three say today, that's going to be my official stance. The pressure's on. What should, what should we do? What should be the church's stance though, for real? Um, AT&T, talk to us. Be careful because you
Um,
know you at the in-laws house, so don't say nothing too crazy.
right. I gotta use my inside voice. Um, so one, I think that the church shouldn't be silent on anything else. I think we've done enough of being silent and saying don't ask, don't tell, and not having responsible and important conversations about things. So let's dead that. Let's stop doing that. And then if you move on from that, I think we should responsibly engage the conversation concerning cannabis. And I think we should do it if it serves medicinal and medical benefits, but I also think we should engage the conversation from a recreational standpoint. If we can engage alcohol in a recreational way and in a social way, I believe we should be able to responsibly engage cannabis in a recreational and social way. And so I think we should be able to have open and honest conversations and dialogue about medical benefits, but also social benefits. Sometimes you just need to calm down. Like, stop, pause, slow down. And so I think that if we remove the stigma and decriminalize it in our social circles, then we can have more honest and responsible conversations, and people stop doing stuff in private. I mean, stop not talking about the things that they do in private because they don't want you to know. So half your church is already probably smoking weed, but you got a better weed man, but you don't want to tell them because y'all don't want to talk about weed. Like, we could really be out here, making some moves and doing some really powerful things if we were open and honest to having these conversations. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, as you were talking, I was thinking about that pastor that Myron brought up, where like this pastor has a lot of people under her or his leadership, and they are using like they're using cannabis, THC and CBD, like using it, but not talking about it, only talking about it in private. So they got people in the pews who are still condemning it, while in private, the pastor's using it. T, you want to say something?
Yeah, and it just made me think of another thought, especially from that pastoral perspective versus the congregational perspective. So you freed and liberated yourself in your own physical and mental capacities, but you still gonna have your congregation walking around here in chains and in bondage. And like, just from an ethical and a moral standpoint, like you can't do that. That's like you're walking both sides of the fence. So how is it that you gonna be out here liberated and free and sleeping well with no anxiety in your back and your neck and your knees don't hurt, and you got sister and brother and non-binary congregant over here in pain and suffering and mental anguish because you don't want to have honest conversations? Like somebody gonna have to help me understand how that makes sense.
Yeah. I knew that was coming. That was good. There's an ethical issue
Her
as a
first time on
leader.
the show.
Yes. Yes. There's an ethical issue there. Randall, what should the church do, man?
First of all, I think the church should stop making decisions for people. That's what I think we ought to do, right? You only make decisions for children. So could it be that we're not doing our job if we've got to make every ethical decision on behalf of the people? Our job is this, to give you a framework in which to build your life upon. I got a great framework that you can use. It's called the Greatest Commandment Theology. If you use that as a methodology to make your decisions, then you can make sure your decisions line up with the will of God. So I'm going to stop making your decisions, and I'm going to give you a framework to make your own. Y'all are too kind to me. Thank you so much. I love it. I'm going to make it my ringtone. You will have
I loved it.
anymore.
I absolutely love it. That was good. Come on, Greatest Commandment Theology. I know a thing or two about that. Breaking all the rules. Go to christianasmith.com and pick it up. Grayson, what you got, man? What should the church do?
I think it should stop cannibalizing people based off cannabis. And I wanted to do that wordplay, but I do actually mean something by that. So I think the thought that you had, Christian, about the church, like with how it sounded to me what Nadia Boltz Weber said about sex, like the church has viewed sex as one of its competitions, which also gets you in your body and helps you calm down, and in addition to a lot of other things, of course. But weed does the same thing. So if congregants aren't anxious and aren't standing in the need of prayer constantly and aren't coming to the pastor for everything, which is fine, but if the church isn't, or if the congregants aren't using cannabis, then they're subject to be cannibalized, meaning the church can eat them up for all that they're worth financially, spiritually, theologically, because cannabis is but just one means by which the church can exercise its full authority and domination over people. And I think it points to the fragility of the white supremacist religion upon which so many of our churches are
Was it fragility? I don't know.
unwittingly.
Unwitting? I don't know. Keep going, because we got like 2.5 minutes and we got to close out the show. Keep going.
Okay, Kirkland's not here to cover my ass. Don't read into that. But yeah, I just think
you did for us, but continue.
Yeah, I just think that the church needs to recognize that if its greatest threat is reality, then it needs a reality check. And reality involves people having sex, people smoking weed being a thing that exists. And yeah, that's all I got.
No, that's good. That's really good. I want to reiterate what Myron said, that if we use a framework to determine how we should approach cannabis use, it'll help us, and it'll help us to stop condemning people. Now, we're not saying everybody needs to use cannabis. It's not for everybody, but I can't dictate to everybody what they should do based off my personal preferences. So, whatever argument you have against cannabis, make sure you apply that same standard to every other substance you ingest. The reason we like soul food is because of the effect it has on us. It's not just because it tastes good, but it settles us. It makes us relax. It makes us get sleepy. The same way you shouldn't smoke weed and get into a vehicle, you probably shouldn't eat a whole lot of soul food to get into a vehicle and drive either, because you're liable to fall asleep.
You're gonna have the itis.
Exactly. You're going to have the itis. So if we can use that framework, and we got to get our faith leaders to start having a framework instead of just a bunch of rules to give to people, because that'll help us with actually giving people a way to go through life without having to depend on us for every decision that they make. So that's the devil's lettuce. We're going to figure out an official stance for the faith community for cannabis based on what my friends here have suggested. We have one more episode to film this season, and it's going to be our election reflections. So please get ready. Election Reflections is our last episode of the season. This is Christian Smith, Holy Smoke, Cigars, and Spirituality. We will see you next time. All right. That was good.
That was good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you joined us, Tierney.
I don't know if I had much to contribute, but I was present. Praise the Lord.
Your
What you mean?
presence
You
is a
did
contribution
contribute.
enough.
Yeah, absolutely. You had a mic drop.
Sure did.
And
That was great.
and the virtual audience, y'all was giving some really good comments in here. We see Pam joined us a little bit late. She's working tonight. But Corey and Josh and Ariana and Pamela and Tim Carruthers, he's hilarious. He said he was gonna put cannabis use in the church bylaws thanks to T.
I'm down with that, Reverend. I am down.
Tim, you're already so Tim said, "Can I join TFC?" Here's the thing that I think a lot of people are missing about TFC. We create these different ministries that are offshoots of TFC because we want to give people a way to engage the church that doesn't feel like church. But if you connect yourself to Holy Smokes, you're a part of TFC. We're not trying to steal you from your church, but I mean, this is a ministry of TFC. So Tim, you're already a member.
Yeah,
Welcome.
the right hand of fellowship.
Right.
Having
the right
believed
hand.
that you believe by the Spirit of God. So you know it with this shirt.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is episode 11. Y'all, we are one episode away from finishing the season. It has gone by so fast. We decided not to discuss the election tonight because we wanted it to be completely over and be able to sit with our thoughts before we actually recorded that episode. So next Saturday, we'll film the last episode of this season, and it'll be our election reflections. So y'all take care of yourselves. All right. If you need to stay away from the news, stay away from the news. Do what you got to do. Take care of yourself. All right. Anybody else got anything you want to share with the live audience before we go?
I just like to say I pray in tongues more than you all. That's what the Apostle Paul said.
You stupid. You stupid. Corey, we're not sending you a weed box, man.
He's been asking.
$30 membership.
You can get a
We'll do a
cigar.
$50 membership.
Did you get a weed box?
Well, no. So if we're gonna send you some weed, that means we need to have $100 membership, and we'll send you 7 grams.
My God, I hear people signing up everywhere right now. My neighbors are interested. They done popped out the house.
You know that. You know that rapper next door. You know he's got to be smoking something.
Yeah, he's right there.
Corey said done. Let him know when it's on the Patreon. Sign him up.
All right, y'all. We'll see y'all next
Oh, I was
time.
just gonna add. I was gonna
Oh,
add one more thing. I was just gonna say it was fun being on this side of the camera because I'm always in the behind the scenes. That's it.
yes, yes. And y'all make sure y'all go check out Tierney's podcast, Sassy Soul Versations.
Yes.
Please go check it out.
You dropped
Yeah.
the first episode already, right?
Yes, it came out today.
All right. And you got a special guest on it. What y'all talking about?
I had a special guest. Her name's Amanda Harper, and so today we talked a little bit about her passions, which include womanism, Black feminism, and the Old Testament.
Amanda Harper from Virginia.
Yeah, SCVU.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why does Myra know all these people? I just don't
Myra knows
understand.
everybody.
Tierney, what is your Patreon address?
Oh, my Patreon goes to I am Tierney J.
Okay. And that's Tierney.
Yes, Grayson, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, fam. We'll see y'all next time. Take care of yourself.
See you later,
Take
folks.
care of your mind, your body, your soul. We'll see you next time.